Welcome to Loup TV. I'm Gene, along with Andrew and Doug. Today is Tuesday, January 25th, which is the first of 2 days of Fed meetings. We're going to hear from Chairman Powell tomorrow in the afternoon. All market is focused on that. We'll hit that quickly at the top and separately focus on some integration between Tesla and Apple Wallet. Next is talk about Microsoft and some of the difficulties they're having at delivering HoloLens for the Department of Defense. Next, Google's FLoC, which is an ad tech platform, is been re-geared, and this all plays into the IDFA and some of the things that Apple's doing and Facebook is also navigating. And last, we're going to talk about the toy department and Peloton, a shareholder letter related to some changes at the top and potential M&A on that front. We're going to jump back to the top, quickly talk about the market. Saw some pretty wicked movements again today. Market was at one point, NASDAQ down 3%. It's rallied back down around 1%. We're recording this before the market close. And want to bring in Doug. What do you make of these 2 days?
It's hard to know ever what to make of market moves like this. Everybody wants to take guesses about, are we going to go up or down from here? We look at data, and I mean, one piece of data that I saw most recently about days where you had, I think it was a 4.5% down move to essentially flat or up in the market. The only other times basically that has happened was throughout 2000, the dot-com boom, throughout 2008, the GFC, happened once in 2016 and it happened once in 2020. And so obviously many of those things are not like what we are experiencing right now. Right now we're dealing with, what's going to happen with Fed policy. But when you see moves like that, I think, again, this is all speculation, but I think that there's probably a lot of people who are taking some short-term profit, probably some short covering going on. Because people have maybe been expecting this to happen given the Fed. It feels like a very consensus-y market right now. But again, I think you go back to what do you do with the market? It's hard to predict, can't predict it. You buy value where you see it, and that's the mandate.
Love it. We're just going to keep moving on. I'm sure we'll have more tomorrow from Powell's comments and hit our A topic, which is Tesla is allowing their insurance card to be viewed in Apple Wallet. It's about as light of an integration as you could have. It did catch our attention just given some of the war of words between leadership between the two companies and the likely competition or potential competition down the road between the two. And I want to bring in Andrew. When you think about this, maybe just give everyone a one-on-one exactly what is going on between Tesla Insurance and Apple Wallet and why it made it as our A topic.
Well, as I understand it, if you buy your insurance through Tesla and you are a Tesla owner, you with an iOS device, you can put your insurance card in your Apple Wallet for your Tesla insurance.
So if you get pulled over by law enforcement, you could show your card on. That's about the use case.
License and insurance, please. You could pull out eventually for both your license and your insurance, you could pull out your iPhone. Anytime that Tesla is integrating Apple, it's going to raise questions. But unfortunately, anytime there's also a similar integration from Fandango for movie tickets, it's probably meaningless. But the question around Apple integrating Apple Music Tesla integrating Apple Music into their software, or better yet, enabling CarPlay in Teslas, is a bigger question and more appealing. It's the user base from Tesla overlaps with Apple. I haven't seen data, but it's got to be significant. And I know that there's a demand amongst Tesla users that have iOS devices for Apple Music integration and CarPlay integration. Unfortunately, I don't think this is a sign that that's coming anytime soon.
Yeah, if you look at CarPlay adoption, it's almost 100% now in the U.S. with new cars available. You have that option. You usually pay a little bit more for it. But if you want to give a probability that eventually we get CarPlay on Tesla, let's say in the next 5 years.
I think Apple Music integration is a high likelihood, 80% plus. CarPlay integration is a low likelihood, less than 30% in the next 5 years, unfortunately.
For me, that makes sense. I would agree with that. And I think just still what both companies are trying to do, which is hardware, software, services, it would make sense that that kind of that layer is still provisioned and has walls around it from Tesla. So I would agree with that. It did catch our attention, though. Probably not a ton of movement for the substance of how Tesla's software works around the topic. Next, Microsoft, HoloLens. Remember, they're the first really augmented reality company. And they had a large contract, $22 billion contract with the government over many years, the Department of Defense. They've paid, they being the government, has paid Microsoft $40 million for development around some headsets, and this would be some night vision related. But the government has decided not to take delivery of these headsets. And wanted to see, it kind of is another one of those headlines that may kind of quickly pass us by, but it caught your attention, Doug, and why?
I think it's just another data point about how hard it is to do augmented reality and build the hardware in a compelling and useful way. And it brings me back to a discussion we've had before about Apple. And there were expectations that we might get some sort of a mixed reality or augmented reality device later this year from Apple. Obviously, news has come out that that's not going to happen. And that was always my position. I was always sort of bearish on the idea that they would come out with a device. And it comes to a simple first principle for me around Apple, which is they don't put out devices that aren't incredibly great. And so when you see this news from the military and their work with Microsoft has been building the HoloLens for a really long time. I mean, I think the HoloLens, if I remember, we bought one when it first came out. I think this was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. So, I mean, they've been in the AR, maybe even more than that. And they've been in the AR glasses game for that long in market, right? Not just R&D and experimentation, but in market with this product. And the military is saying, hey, there's not much we can do with this right now. It just tells me that I think AR glasses from being mainstream, it's still way longer than any of us probably want to admit it is.
So Andrew, why would if Doug is correct, why would Apple have been planning on doing a mixed reality headset? I think that the plans were true. I think Gurman's reporting was accurate on this, that they wanted to do something at WWDC this year. If it's so far out, why is Apple trying to push forward here?
Well, I think it comes down to the next computing platform, right? Beyond touch, beyond voice, what position do wearables have in the ecosystem of computing? And Apple's in a unique position with an ecosystem of devices already in place. Adding a mixed reality headset or some head-worn wearable for computing when you're out and about, on the go, when you're in the real world and want to integrate computing in some way, like it makes sense from an ecosystem play perspective. The question in my mind is, how do they market it? What compelling use cases can they build, right? What are those tentpole features that they talk about at the keynote? And I just don't think they're there. If they're not there for the military yet and the Microsoft device, I don't think Apple is there with users broadly.
From my perspective, there's a little bit of some similarity between what's going on with autonomous driving and what's going to happen with mixed reality. And we never believed that Apple is going to have a mainstream mixed reality headset this year or next year. We were thinking this is probably a few years away from really getting adoption, but the price needs to come down significantly. But we did think that they would show it to developers to try to build some of those tentpole. And I think in the case of, this is such a step forward in terms of computing, not only from the lift around battery usage, but anchoring your LiDAR, anchoring digital assets onto the real world. It's really difficult. And I think that a lesson that Apple has learned is that devices, they take off when use cases are present. The iPhone was great, but the first version of the App Store or the first version of apps were web-based apps on Safari, and it really didn't do anything. And then once it became a computer in your pocket, it took off. And similarly with the watch, it had a kind of a dud of a start. And as more and more use cases became available, the demand quickened. And I think it's the same case here. And so from my perspective, it makes a ton of sense for Apple to show this to the developer community. It might not be till next year. I would agree with that it's probably going to take longer than we think. But I think you're going to see what Apple's working on well before it becomes mainstream. I'm going to pull seniority and leave with a final word there and jump to next.
Hold on. Before you do, you can have the final word, but I wanted to ask, With the phone, it was a widescreen iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator device. With the watch, it was notifications, fitness, and time telling that were those tentpole features that weren't from developers, but from Apple itself, built into the device on day one. What is that with the MR headset? It's something I spent time thinking about.
I think the initial, because what you just described with the watch and the phone were accurate, but it's become so much more today. I think the initial around mixed reality is gaming.
How is that different than a VR headset, though? How's that?
It's not much different. This is variations of a theme that's been out there. This is what Apple does: is it takes a theme and makes it better. And I guess wearable computing is something that I believe in. I think that utility still needs to be proven out. There's still comfort levels of wearing these. There's a lot of work that needs to happen before it's mainstream. But I think that it is very similar to some of the trials and tribulations around virtual reality. But I do think gaming is the first area of the first strong use case. And gamers aren't going to pay $3,000 for an Apple mixed reality headset. They're going to pay the real hardcore ones might pay $500. But
there's a spirited debate we could have here. I would offer one more thought though, which is Apple has never in the history that I've covered it been a sort of gamer first company. They've built platforms, and then obviously there are games that work on Apple devices. But to me, it feels like a stretch if we really think that gaming is going to be the first use case. Apple's going to build this device catering to gamers as the core use function. I don't think that's going to happen. I would take the.
I'm not saying that they're going to cater to gamers. I'm saying that will be the first use case of it. It's just like saying the metaverse is not all about gaming, but the first use case is. And I would also go back to look at any developer comp or look at any Apple presentation. I would say that any given presentation is 10-15% of it related to gaming. 10%
casual games, though.
Casual
if you're talking
games.
About somebody who has to spend $500 for a device built for gaming, that's not a casual gamer. That's a hardcore gamer. So I don't know. I think we need to keep going back to the drawing board. I think Apple needs to keep going back to the drawing board. If they really think gaming is the thing, I think they're wrong. And I think they need to find something that's more kind of consumer mainstream that ties more into what the iOS ecosystem is built on than gaming.
Just so my record is clear here, I believe that the power of mixed reality goggles goes way beyond gaming. I think gaming is the first use case. I don't think that's a foundational use case for it. Let's jump to next topic, which is Google abandoning FLoC. If you don't know what FLoC is, you're not alone. Almost nobody knows what FLoC is. Thankfully, Doug does. Doug talked about it on a Loup TV episode, I think like a year ago. Actually, it probably wasn't a year ago, right when IDFA was getting up to steam. You mentioned the industry, the ad industry is going to come out with other ways that they can try to accomplish the same thing without using Apple and kind of get away from Apple. And you pulled FLoC out of thin air and remembered it since. But here we are now. FLoC's taking a shift in direction. What's the significance of that?
I don't think there's any significance. And I would say probably something similar to what I said at that time, which is the ad industry is going to figure out an alternative to traditional tracking methods. So we all know that cookies, as we know them, are sort of dying. Google has accepted that. Apple's done what they've done with IDFA. Traditional tracking methods just are not the future of ad, kind of ad targeting, ad customization. But I think there's kind of two simple ways to look at this. On one side, on the consumer side, and Apple is very much heavy on this side. They're concerned about privacy. They're concerned about tracking. They're concerned about data. On the other side, you have advertisers who want to reach customers and who want to reach the right customers targeted in a way that, aligns with, I think, the desire for privacy. And so what we're going to eventually get, and whether it's FLoC, which Google has, moved on from, now they're talking about a product called Topics. It doesn't really matter what the application of it is. We are going to have some method where companies like Google that have information on us are able to apply that information in a privacy-friendly way to deliver better ads. And at the end of the day, I want to make a point that I think is really important. We get caught up, and it's easy to get caught up in this debate that can be religious about, the merits of privacy and the merits of ads. But if we all want to continue to enjoy the incredible free products that we do enjoy, like Google's product, like the things that Facebook offers, like Twitter, we have to accept advertising. or we have to start paying for the product. So we can make a choice, right? But at some level, they have to have a way to monetize the things that they've put together. And by the way, targeted ads, I don't think are necessarily evil. You don't want to see a bunch of totally random, non-relevant ads because they're going to be part of your experience, whether you like it or not. So I think there's a careful middle ground we could tread here. And that's sort of the direction we're moving.
So on this topics platform, who would be the end customer of that? Who would implement that? Describe whether it was be FLoC or like Facebook isn't going to use topics to help with their ad target. They're building their own platform. Snap's building their own platform. Who is it? Is it like somebody who has an app developer that has an app running on Google Play, an Android app? Would they be the ones using?
I don't think they've made it totally clear yet how exactly they'll implement topics. I mean, this is kind of the new iteration of something they're testing where they collect basically like 300 points of interest for a given user, right? And some of it is submitted by the user, him or herself. I think that Google ultimately probably does open that up, particularly to their third-party ad network participants. So they will use the product within their own confines. Like you said, Facebook have a product, Snap's going to have a product. I think we're going to see a lot of products like this, and it'll be platform specific.
Mm-hmm. Let's jump to the final topic, which is Peloton, the gift that keeps giving in the toy department. In this case, we got a couple gifts. One is related to a activist shareholder mentioning that there needs to be restructuring at the top and that the founder needs to leave. And second is potential talk of acquisition. So we'll start on the founder side. Any way to get fully out of the company, Doug?
I think it'd be pretty tough. I mean, you look at the way they've structured the company. So Peloton has used a dual share class structure, which almost, I think, every major technology company and most, new technology IPOs use, where one class of shares might have one vote. In some cases, they have no votes. And then the other class of shares might have 10, or in the case of Peloton, their B class of shares, which is what John Foley owns, has 20 shares. And the effect of having this dual class structure is basically it allows the founder or, the management team to maintain control. And so I think it'd be really hard. I don't know how you get there with the math with John Foley with 20 million shares that have 20 votes each. It's pretty tough, unless he starts voting against himself and wants to leave, to have someone force him out.
Andrew, any thoughts on the leadership dynamic at Peloton?
I don't think John wants to leave Peloton, so I think it's pretty unlikely given what Doug just said.
I would add that the culture seems to have some toxic components to it, and it's just surprising given what they do. But some of the contours of things that have leaked out from the company, it's almost as if people internally want this company to fail. It's just quite bizarre. Can't remember seeing anything, and culture starts at the top. It's easy for us to sit here and make commentary about kind of aligning that, but I don't think leadership's going to change. But I think that they need to be doubling down. Let's not even worry about what your next product is. Get your culture right, and then I think things can start moving in the right direction. There is also this rumor about getting takeout. We're going to stick with you, Andrew. I'm going to give you the 4 candidates, the 4 potential companies that could acquire, that are rumored to be acquiring Peloton, including Apple, Netflix, Google, and Nike. And you want to pick none is perfectly acceptable, or all 4 of them. Which do you think, or what is the most likely outcome when it comes to M&A?
Well, I think the most likely of those candidates might be Nike. I think the least likely would be Netflix because of the hardware component, then probably Apple, and then Google and before Nike. We can talk more about each of those and why they may want to acquire Peloton. But bottom line is, I think none of them is very likely to actually acquire the company.
Doug?
I would echo that. I mean, I think if you look at those names, you could build cases for any of them that seem very rational. But it's always hard. Anytime a company goes through something like this, there's always speculation about who should buy them, and everybody gets excited about the potential for it to happen. If you just think about the base rates of actually having acquisitions like this happen, it's very rare that you end up with that as an outcome. And so, I look at those names and say, sure, any of them could make sense. I just don't think any of them necessarily want to get into either a hardware business. So for the pure content players like a Disney or a Netflix, they're adding something like hardware, which is different than what they do. And Nike, obviously, they're experts in something very specific, which is apparel. They're not really a content company. So again, they're adding something that isn't really, in my opinion, kind of core to who they are. And so I think that's why it doesn't get done, is because even though it might make sense on a very surface level, I think when you get down to what these companies are all great at, I don't think the alignment's perfect.
I would add, I think it's unlikely. I would put probability at 10% that something happens. And the reason is typically when companies get acquired, they get acquired when things are working. When companies have difficult spots, usually, even though it's a good topic talk about M&A, usually, and the share price falls, people don't acquire them. Look at what Apple and passing on Tesla when it was in a dark spot. And I think it's just not comfortable for companies to do this. So that's a hard stop there. 10% chance it happens. If it was going to happen, it's an easy pick for me of those four. It's Nike, almost a $250 billion company. Peloton's market cap right now is $9 billion. Nike does inch outside of apparel. You can debate whether skates. They did some acquisitions in hockey. They've done acquisitions in golf. These are all small compared to what Peloton would be, but it would be kind of they don't do content business, but who's to say that this could be a powerful way to build brand? There's probably a pretty high overlap. And on a last thought, just a little bit of a visual here is at the end of the year, Andrew was nice enough to flag that some Peloton apparel was on sale, deeply discounted after the holiday, probably still the case. I ordered some Peloton shorts. Of course, blue is my color, so I got my Peloton shorts. That was fine. And then as I further opened up the package, I saw that the Nike logo, so it's Peloton and Nike. Double branded. My heart sank when I saw that. I couldn't imagine being more off the mark. Who are you? Are you Peloton? Are you Nike? I think this is actually an omen. I don't think it was something to make your heart sink. It probably is to, if it ever is going to happen on the M&A front, it's there in front of our eyes, the map. On that, we got a lot today. We got a lot more coming tomorrow with Chairman Powell and some tech earnings around Microsoft. Until then, on behalf of Andrew, Doug, Gene, and Loup TV, bye for now.